Welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege to read Parashas Devorim, to begin Chumash Devorim. And although, of course, we find ourselves in the midst of the 9 days, and Parashas Devorim is always Shabbos Chazon, the Shabbos right before the observance, the heartbreaking observance of Tisha B'Av, but there is still a certain level of excitement that always comes with a new Chumash, with a new beginning. And Chumash Devarim is so unique because, unlike the rest of the Torah, other four Chumashim, which are so much more focused on the conveyance of new information, of mitzvos, although Chumash Devarim has plenty of mitzvos as well, but the essence of Chumash Devarim is Moshe Rabbeinu's opportunity for a little bit of chazar, a little bit of review, and reinforcement of what he feels Klal Yisrael is going to need in order to be successful for their entry into Eretz Yisrael. And so, especially in this week's parasha, Moshe Rabbeinu pretty much does like a summary of the major events that occurred over the course of their 40-year sojourn in the desert. And one of the interesting things that Moshe Rabbeinu brings up, and this is towards the middle of Perek Aleph, the middle of chapter 1. So Pasuk Tes Zayin, verse 16. So Moshe Rabbeinu discusses how he established a judicial system, a court system, a system of judges. Of course, we know historically it wasn't actually Moshe Rabbeinu's idea, right? It was when Yisro ultimately regroups with Moshe and he brings the Tzipora and the boys, and he sees Moshe Rabbeinu buckling under this tremendous load of carrying the responsibility of Klal Yisrael on his own. It is then that Yisro suggests to Moshe to go ahead and create a multi-tiered court system. And Moshe Rabbeinu reviews that with Klal Yisrael, and he says as follows. He says, and again, he teaches the judges, this is now in Pasuk Yud Zayin, verse 17, Lo sakiru pane b'mishpat, kakadon kagodol tishmun, lo sagur mipnei ish, ki ha-mishpat le'elokimhu. And Moshe Rabbeinu tells the judges, treat everyone equally. Don't give any preferential treatment, right? The small person should be like the great person. Don't be afraid of anyone, and know at the end of the day that ultimate justice really is reserved for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ultimate judgment is reserved for Hashem. And then Moshe Rabbeinu says something amazing. On the most basic level, a simple statement, literally translated, that which is difficult for you, Moshe Rabbeinu is talking to the judges, that which is difficult to you, bring to me, takrim, I bring it close to me, ushmativ, and I will listen to it. On a basic level, Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, he's like Kiviyachol, Lahavdil, the Supreme Court. So take it up through all of the different circuit judges. You try to adjudicate the case to the best of your abilities, but should there come a situation, should there come a case, should there come a legal matter that you feel is too complex, or should there be a situation that is still too ambiguous for you to pass and for you to rule on, bring it to me. That which is too difficult for you, takrivun elai, bring close to me, ushmativ, and I will listen and do my best, ultimately again to adjudicate, to come to a conclusion. And the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, Zichus Yagin Aleinu, the Rebbe says something on this pasuk that I have to tell you, I feel like it's fundamentally changed my life. Fundamentally changed my life, and I want to share it with you. The Rebbe says there's a deeper message embedded in these words, like in all of the words of the Torah. There's ultimately the external meaning. I wouldn't say chasham superficial. There's nothing superficial in the Torah. But there's the external pashut pshat, and then there's the pnimius. Then there's the deeper dimension of spiritual understanding in every word, in every pasuk, in every concept, in every mitzvah. Says the Rebbe, do you want to know on a pnimius level, on a deeper level, what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying? Listen to what the Rebbe explains. V'hadavar sheyikshe mikem. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying to Klal Yisrael, there are some things in life that are difficult to comprehend. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, Chavra, what do you think is the most difficult thing to understand in life? The most difficult thing. So the truth is, again, I think if Moshe Rabbeinu were to ask us that question, I think all of us would pretty much answer in the same way. Tzadik v'ralo rasha v'tol. The most difficult thing to comprehend is why bad things happen to good people, why good things seem to always happen to bad people, all that. Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, that's not the most difficult thing. He says, listen to this. He says, akushya, hadavar asher yikshe. The most difficult thing to comprehend in life, says the Rebbe, hayesh efsharus, lishmoa es habaskol, shuvu banim shovavim, shemachrezes b'chol yom, v'im lo shomim l'shum achruzazeh. So the Rebbe says, you know what the most difficult thing is? The most difficult thing is that there's a baskol. The Gemara tells us that there's a heavenly voice that comes out every day. And what does the heavenly voice, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu cry out to us each and every day? Shuvu banim shovavim. return, wayward children. You know, this Gemara, this is the famous Rav Elisha ben Avuy, which I'm not going to get into now. But every single day a baskol, every single day a heavenly voice comes out. And it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu calling out to us with a simple message. Come home. Shuvu banim shovavim. My children, I love you. It's been too long since you've been home. You've strayed so far away. Can you imagine? The Shekhinah itself calls out to tell us to come home. You see, sometimes in our mind we have this image, we have this vision of an angry God who, when we do something wrong, wants to punish us, and there could be nothing further from the truth. The Ribono Shel Olam is a loving, embracing, forgiving Father. And Vaharaya, the proof to that is each and every day He calls out to us, come home. I know you've made mistakes. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, the Rebbe knows our mistakes better than we know our mistakes. But despite all of those mistakes, despite all of that, despite all the spiritual carnage we often leave in the wake of the way we live our lives, the Shekhinah says, come home. Shuvu banim shovavim. I, says the Rebbe, but maybe you'll say, I learned the Gemara, I heard the baskol. Comes out there. There's only one problem. I've never heard it. I've tried so many times to hear the baskol. Who doesn't want to hear that? Who doesn't want to hear their Father above calling out, come back, come back, come back. I love you unconditionally. I want the relationship with you. I want you to come home despite how far you've strayed. But I've never heard it. Says the Baal Shem Tov. Hadavar asher yiksha mikem. You know what the greatest shaila we all have? The greatest shaila is, I learned in the Gemara that the heavenly voice says Shuvu banim shovavim, but I've never heard it. That's the kasha. And the Rebbe says, so what's the answer? The answer is the very next word in the pasuk, mikem. If I haven't heard the baskol, the heavenly voice coming out saying, return back home, it's not because Hashem's not calling out to me. Mikem. The problem is me. The problem is that sometimes, like the ear canal gets a little bit blocked up with spiritual wax. Sometimes because of my behaviors, sometimes because of my lifestyle, sometimes because of the decisions that I am making, I block out the divine voice. The failure to hear Shuvu banim shovavim is not because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not calling out. That's not what it is. It's because I'm screaming louder. It's because my negative actions are screaming louder, and they're obstructing the divine voice of return from penetrating my neshama. Mikem, says the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem is calling out, he's screaming out every day. The problem is, often my negative actions are screaming even louder than the Shekhinah. So I can't hear it. V'hadavar sheyiksha mikem, the greatest shaila in the world, is I've learned that there's a baskol that calls out every single day. And what's my kasha? What's my question? I can't hear it. I've never heard it in my life. Says the Rebbe, that's not a problem with the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is calling out to each and every one of us every day. Mikem, sometimes the problem is me. Imagine for a moment, you're walking down the street, right? And you're wearing your noise canceling, I think that's the right Drasha, the noise canceling AirPods, right? And your friend comes over to you, and he starts talking. And you're like, I can't hear you. You're going to have to talk louder. And your friend starts talking a little louder. Sorry, still can't hear you. Talk a little louder. Well, at a certain point in time, if I want to be able to hear my friend, I have to take out the AirPods. So lahavdil, sometimes if I'm not hearing the baskol urging me, begging me, pleading with me to return, it's not because the Kadosh Baruch Hu is not talking to me. It's because I'm not hearing the message. There's something obstructing my ability to hear the baskol. So how do you reconcile that? Says the Rebbe. What's the rest of the pasuk? Tikravun elai ushmativ. All where you place the comma. Tikravun elai ushmativ. Just come back to me. Just make your way back to me. Ushmativ. And you'll hear the baskol. Sometimes if you're not hearing the Shekhinah call out to you, just take a couple of steps a little bit closer to Him, and Emir Hashem, you'll begin to hear the sweet, beautiful voice of your Father telling you to come back, to come home. That's how the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh reads the pasuk. V'hadavar she'yikshem mikem. You're all walking around one more time with the kasha. What's your great kasha? What's your great question? I learned in the Gemara that a baskol comes out every day and says, Shivu banim shovavim, return wayward children. So what's my kasha? I've never heard it. I would love for the Shekhinah to reach out to me. I would love it. That's my kasha. Moshe answers it, mikem. So it's question mark. What's the greatest kasha? Right? Why doesn't the baskol call out to me? And what's the answer? Mikem, because I'm obstructing the baskol. I'm obstructing myself from hearing the baskol. My actions are obstructing. The decisions I'm making are obstructing. Mikem. It's from me. And therefore, what's the answer? Tikravun elai ushmativ. Ultimately, Parak Aleph Pasuk Yizan. You look at it inside. Tikravun elai ushmativ. Just come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sometimes if you can't hear the baskol, you need to take the step to bring yourself a little bit closer to the Shekhinah, a little bit closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And suddenly you'll be able to hear the beautiful voice of your Father calling out to you to come back home. So often in life, we don't hear the Shekhinah, and we don't feel the Shekhinah. And especially again in this time of the year where we mourn a certain level of existential distance from the Ribono Shel Olam. The loss of our Eretz Yisrael as it was, the loss of our Beis HaMikdash. There's a little bit of a distance, a little bit of a loss. And sometimes when we don't hear the baskol, or we don't feel close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we make the erroneous assumption that He has distanced Himself from us. But dear friends, there is nothing further from the truth. No one loves us in this world like HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No one cares for us in this world like the Ribono Shel Olam. No one wants to be closer to each and every one of us than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And sometimes in life, if we're not hearing the baskol to come home, and we're not feeling the closeness, sometimes if we're honest, it's not because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has distanced Himself from us, but it's because sometimes even unknowingly, we've distanced ourselves from Him. But the beautiful news, it says Moshe Rabbeinu to us, Vatikravun elai, if you just come a little bit closer, all it takes is one little step to come a little bit closer to our Father. One little step. See, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I can't hear you right now. I can't feel you right now, but I know that you want me. I know that you love me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take one step closer to you. And Moshe Rabbeinu assures us, Vatikravun elai, if you take one step closer, ushmativ, you will hear your Father. You'll hear the baskol. You'll feel His presence. And what a profound and important lesson for us as we go into Shabbos Chazon. Shabbos, where there is a little bit of a feeling of a distance, a little bit of a feeling of estrangement, a little bit of a feeling of Keli lama azaftani. Kind of, I don't know what's going on. But even when you don't know what's going on, Moshe Rabbeinu tells us your Father always loves you. Your Father always wants you. Your Father always wants to be close. And Chevra, maybe our avoda on this Shabbos Chazon, our avoda over these 9 days, over Tisha B'Av, is to take the necessary steps. And if we don't hear the baskol to return every day, and if we don't feel a closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, maybe the issue is not on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's side, but maybe there's a blockage in me. And if we just take one step, Vatikravun elai, one step, ushmativ, then maybe the whole relationship falls into place. Maybe. Halavai we should be zochem Yirtzeh Hashem. Halavai we should be zochem to hear the baskol of Shivu Banim Shomavim. And we should be privileged to feel like HaKadosh Baruch Hu in close proximity to us at all times. But if we don't allow yourself to remain in that state. Take one step closer to your Father. Because Moshe Rabbeinu assures us that if we find the courage to do so, ushmativ, we will hear Him beckoning us to come home, and we will feel the warmth of His beautiful embrace. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.